Previously.
So I want to show you something I'm working on, and you can decide whether to include it in your video or not.
No, but it's great. I mean, you've got to take a position. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that you do. So I appreciate it.
But before you close this out, that's why I keep coming back over here to the demonstrative chart. The cognitive stuff, I think everybody is doing the cognitive stuff. Get the hands-on. Focus on the hands-on. I can't stress this part enough. Focus on the hands-on. This is the chart that I'm going to push everybody to, is the hands-on chart, because I think this is going to be the one that takes you further in your career than this one does. That's my
and it's
belief.
actually cheaper.
And it's actually cheaper. I give a standing joke to my stream. I'm like, you see this thing right here? It doesn't type itself, right? You need to put your hands on this thing, and you need to put that thing to work inside of these demonstrative home labs, and that's what I think is important.
I got to plug Neal, because otherwise I can't get him back for all these interviews. So, we've got to find out if you actually know what you're talking about.
I'll give you a hint, David. It's all the DMs that I get that keep me coming back.
So I was gonna raise a challenge here. So Neal, I think we should take this to the next level. I'm gonna run a giveaway of $1,000.
Oh my God!
When Neal tells me that he's given up on his DMs. So could I ask all of you to give him lots of DMs, follow him on Twitter and other places, and DM him like crazy until he raises the white flag, and then I'll run a competition.
So here's what I want everybody to hear from that. Right? Here's what. So you've heard this DM thing with David and I for the last month and a half that he and I have been working together on this. He's realizing that I'm serious about my DMs. He's realizing that he's not gonna win this DM thing, and so now he's really trying to up the game on everybody.
That's right.
He's really trying to bring the force. I got you. I will answer every DM.
So here's the challenge. Let's see how when I met Neal, he had 260 followers on Twitter.
Yeah,
and I think he's almost at 6,000 now.
Yeah.
So depends on when this video is released. But let's see if we can increase that, and let's see if we can get him to raise the white flag. That's my challenge. So show us what you're up to.
I will match whatever dollar figure or physical product giveaway that David does for this if I raise the right flag. So I won't. You're not going to go in alone on this, David. I'll match.
Good.
Okay, so I have been working on something that it's completely in beta, and so it's not something that's ready for prime time. But I gave a sneak peek of it on Monday's stream. I'll give a sneak peek of it, kind of here on your show whenever it goes live. But hands down, the question that I'm sure you get as well, right? Which is, it's something that I get too, which really focuses in around on, what's the best? What do I need to take, right? And then there's always the question that you asked me, which is what the path is. And so I started to kind of put something together. And I don't know if your audience is familiar with an organization called Gartner.
I'm sure a lot of people in the Cisco world are. So it depends on who's watching, but they're quite famous.
Yeah.
Quite famous. A lot of vendors, the standing joke is when vendors try and sell their product, they put up a Gartner slide saying we are the best.
Well, and that's kind of what I did for my audience as well. I'm trying to get the screen share to work. Here we go. So just for what I did for my audience, on the stream the other day was I brought up kind of something like this, right? This is the Gartner quadrant for RPAs, robotic process automations. So if you've never seen Gartner, right? It's a quadrant. They call it the magic quadrant, right? And you can see that along the x-axis on the bottom it says completeness of vision, and on the left-hand side it says ability to execute. And then they've got the different quadrants based on challengers, leaders, niche players, and visionaries. None of us are, to David's point, right? None of us are a huge fan of Gartner because it feels very pay to play. When I give this example for things like endpoint detection response, SIM solutions, things like that in the cybersecurity space, Microsoft ends up being a leader in endpoint detection and response, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that their endpoint detection response is awesome, and more to do with the fact that Microsoft has Defender ATP everywhere. And so because they have a large market share on Defender ATP, they're viewed as a leader in the EDR space. So it's not even from a cybersecurity perspective, we can't even trust the data that's in these Gartner charts. So, what better model to decide to build on than the Gartner model in terms of what it is that I wanted to do. But I wanted to bring some real value and some real informed decision making to the cybersecurity training space. And so I have started to work on the cyber insecurity training chart, which is like Gartner but not pay to play. Where I take a quadrant, right? So a quadrant very similar, and I break it down across the top side, professional and hobbyist. Because when we think about ethical hacking, right? And I'll use ethical hacking because it's probably the most the most sought after. Whether you like to admit it to yourself or not, and I know that this is why David likes to have me on the show, is because of the controversy that I bring to it when I make bold statements.
You got to have an opinion, so I like it. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that's what's important, right? Is that this is all very opinion based. I do want to say this, right? For anybody watching this is Neal's opinion based on either direct experience or experience with folks who have so I guess direct or indirect experience based on people who have worked for me, peers in the industry, things like this. This is absolutely, you can actually see I have a tab down here for grading criteria, which is completely blank because I haven't
Neal's gut feeling. That's what
I'm trying not to make a big giant circle that says Neal's gut feeling on here. I will put some grading criteria on here. This is why I say to people it's in alpha. It's probably not even a beta. It's in alpha. But from a quadrant perspective, you can see we do have hobbyists, right? You really identify with yourself, right? If you're listening to this and you're thinking about your ethical hacking career, are you interested in ethical hacking because it sounds cool, because we've glamorized it on TV, but you'll only ever be a hobbyist, right? You just like to dabble in it, right? You like having CEH because you want to tell people you're a certified ethical hacker, right? You're a hobbyist. Versus people who are truly professionals who are like, I want to be a professional hacker. I want to work for a consulting company. I want to work for a Fortune 100 company. I want to actually secure an organization through my ethical hacking skill sets, right? And so I think that that's the first realization that people have to come to, from a self-learning perspective, is, are they a hobbyist or are they a professional? But then on top of that, you have the free education and training, and then you have the paid education and training. And I think this is what makes the conversation all that more harder, because you have to figure out some way that you can measure the free versus the paid. And so I've kind of done, down here across the bottom, my bottom is cost to value, right? Not necessarily what's more expensive, but the amount of money that you put in versus the amount of value that you get out of it, right? And so YouTube's an easy example, right? You don't have to put any money into YouTube to go to YouTube and take ethical hacking videos on YouTube, but you're not necessarily going to put on your resume that you watched 16,000 hours worth of YouTube content, right?
I disagree, Neal. They're going to start putting on their CV, I watched Neal and David.
The day that you and I become resume credentializing material, we may have to change the challenge to be another massive giveaway or something like that.
That's right.
When PwC calls me up and it's like, Neal, I saw that you were credentialized on somebody's CV. We'll have a different conversation there.
I think we should do that. Anyway,
and so it's low cost, low value, completely and totally free, but I still think it's valuable. That doesn't detract from the fact that it's valuable, but it's low cost, low value, right? Because it's in the hobbyist realm. And so moving to the right, you can kind of go and you can look at something like SANS, you can look at something like OffSec, and you're going to put money into it, and you're going to get a lot of value out of it. And so that's why on this chart, when we go from the bottom of this chart, this is the value to your career, right? Are you going to be able to use this to our point on your LinkedIn and have it actually mean something really, really awesome from a career perspective when you go to put it on your resume. And you can see that I've broken this down by cognitive, because I think that this is also important. You have cognitive training. This gets back to some of the things that we were talking about before, David. This is the cognitive based training, which is the stuff that you put into your head, and you've got that knowledge inside of your head from a book knowledge perspective. But then you have demonstrative, right? And this is what you always hear me talk about on our shows and on my streams and things like that, right? Is when you put your hands on the keyboard and you can actually demonstrate the knowledge that you've learned, where do you get that cost of value? And so back to all the way around to your original question, David, which was from a cost of value perspective, the YouTube equivalent of your hands-on experience is ctftime.org. It's completely free. Most of the CTFs that are there are completely free. You can go do them and you can get hands-on, but you're not going to get a job solely based on how many CTFs that you've done on ctftime.org. Conversely, from a free perspective, this is why these three are on that upper right quadrant of my free education quadrant, is because I think these three do provide you today the best free platforms for you to go out and get that demonstrative hands-on home lab experience in a free fashion. And I did include the paid versions of Hack the Box, Try Hack Me, Range Force. And I know we talked about INE. This may come out. I don't know how I feel about this. Again, this gets back to I haven't put grading criteria on here yet. But I'm on the fence about this. But I would definitely say these three and these three here. And again, I haven't included Security Blue Team. I haven't incorporated, red versus blue. I haven't done all of this. But I would say that as of today, if you ask me my opinion today, if you're looking for the free hands-on home lab, these three companies give you the ability to go out there and for free get the home lab experience today, right? And they have easy upgrade paths. From a cost perspective, I brought Try Hack Me and Hack the Box down because they're actually cheaper on their monthly plans than something like Range Force is. But this is a work in progress. Gives you an idea of what I'm trying to build for the community.
I want to quiz you on that. So can you go back to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because now it's time for me to put you in the hot seat.
Absolutely. Let's do it. And again, you're putting me in the hot seat, David. I'm a squirm a little bit, right? Because this is beta, and this is the first time I've had anybody critique this. So
no.
Let's do this. Let's do this.
It's at the end of the day, it's your opinion, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, looking at that chart on your first tab, for people who don't know how to read this, what are you recommending? What's the best, basically? Let's give us your top three based on this. So is anything INE? Is that so? It's right on the top right. Is INE your ultimate, or is that in the top right because it's expensive?
So as of this day, with just the things that I've included on this chart, and I admit that I do not have everything here, and so I don't want people to take this as a final version, by any stretch of the imagination. And I will absolutely give, and you can tell that I'm doing the corporate thing where I'm adding all these caveats to it to make sure that that everybody understands. I haven't been transparent about my grading criteria, so I'm going to answer that question because it is truly a gut feel right now with no math or science behind it. And so when you look at this, if anybody is looking at this and wanting to know what my gut feel today is from a training perspective is, the cost that you spend, the investment that you're going to spend on this training measured against the value to your career. So let's look at anything SANS. A SANS course is $7,500 a course, and that's before the exam attempt. Okay. Their cost is very much to the right. And you can only take one course, right? So you may take GCIH, which is a course that I taught when I was a SANS instructor, which was the incident handler course. Or you may take 560, which is their penetration testing course. That's one course. So for one $7,500 investment, you can take one SANS course. So it's definitely to the right from a cost perspective. The value is there. You're going to get taught by Steve Sims or Josh Wright, who are very, very smart in this industry, but you're going to get one course and one cert. So the value to your career is lower than both OffSec and INE, because for the same price as you would spend on one SANS class, you could get multiple classes at OffSec, or you can get the entire premium package at I&E. And so from a cost to value perspective, and then ultimately a value to your career perspective, that's why it's in my upper right. So that's the math that I use behind it. I still think OffSec is valuable, but I think SANS is too expensive. And when I look at these, you'll notice that these are folks, CompTIA, EC Council, anything InfoSec Institute, right? These are folks who take these CompTIA or EC Council, courses and just simply repackage them up and teach them in their way, but they're still teaching this concept. And so the cost of value is it's a low cost to the value, and especially something like EC Council, where, we've talked about how, terrible of a reputation CEH has. And so the value to your career is pretty low. And so that's the way that I would look at this, is that for the, when you're a big fan, David, of asking me if I've only got $100, I've only got $200, I've only got $300 to put into something.
Yeah, let's do that. So I've got $100, I've got $1,000, and I've got $5,000. What would you? So let's start with a cheap one, 100. And I mean, that $100 for some people is a lot of money. So I've got $100. Where would you spend it?
If you've got $100 and that's all you have, I would actually stay over here in the free tier. $100, because if you look at InfoSec Institute, and I need to double check this, but I think that they're just starting to offer monthly plans, right? Pen Tester Academy offers monthly plans. IT Pro TV offers monthly plans, right? Udemy, Cybersecurity, these are all going to be individual one-off courses, right? Anything I&E, they're offering monthly plans too. But one $100 bill in your pocket may get you 1 or 2 months with these companies. And so I don't think that you're going to be successful with 1 or 2 months and $100 in your pocket, in here, because you're 2 months is a hard, kind of pressure to put on yourself to get all your training in, get a certification, and get out. And so what I would almost encourage people to do is, if you only had $100, I would stay down here, right? And I would stay in the hobbyist realm, right? As a hobbyist, if you could only invest $100 in your career, and this is Neal's opinion, hard truth opinion, but if you only have $100 to invest in your career field, the idea would be to make that $100 go as far as possible.
And would you spend that rather on the hack the lab,
exactly,
hack the box stuff? Is that where you're going? Sorry.
You read my mind with that, right? I would stay here in the free side as much as possible, and this is why I would come over here, and I would look to invest that money on the hands-on piece instead of on the cognitive side. Because again, I get back to people these days, and I did an interview with a CISO, I think it was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago in the morning, and they very much confirmed that they want to see more people with hands-on experience than they do with certifications. And so if you only have $100 to spend, I'm spending it here on the hands-on stuff, right? That's what I would tell you, is I would go spend the hands-on.
To do free training and then spend your money on hack the box stuff
exactly,
like that.
Exactly, 100%.
So if you had $1,000?
If you had $1,000, and I think you're probably more now in the $1,000 area where you're inside the paid stuff, right? And so, if you've got $1,000, I think almost everything here on the paid side of the quadrant is doable for you, except for SANS. Exactly. Yeah, except for SANS. And so if you've got $1,000 and when you look at this side of the chart, your best cost of value is anything I&E.
And they like $700, $800 for a year,
something like that. Yeah. $799 or something like that, I think, with the new price change. Yeah. And so your best cost of value is anything inside their portfolio. But again, we don't teach money management on this show, David. Maybe we should.
I do a little bit, but I think we should.
But I think we should. But I mean, if you were to take OffSec or anything I&E, and you were to invest, let's do the I&E one, right? At $800, that leaves you with $200. Right, let's come over here and let's see what $200 buys us on the hands-on piece as well. And this is why when people say, do I do one or the other? And I'm like, no, do both. Take the training and then also invest on coming over here and doing the Try Hack Me or the Hack the Box or the Range Force, and also investing that stuff on the paid side so that you get kind of the double effect of the hands-on stuff and the paid stuff.
Okay, now if a company is paying for me, because
Oh
some
my
people
God.
are fortunate enough
Yes.
to do that,
Yes.
would you go SANS then? Yeah.
I would still say your cost of value, right, is if the company. So here's the trick with, is the company going to pay for me, right? If a company, so companies that I've been a part of, the are you going to pay for me is I'll give you $5,000 a year to cover all your training and expenses, right? And with the way the price that SANS is priced now, you still can't even get that, SANS training for the company who's going to pay for me. So I like to use the, is the company going to pay for me, is like, is the company going to give me a blank check, or is the company going to still cap my learning? And if the company's still going to cap your learning, I still say go back to your cost of value, right? And your cost of value is you can actually save the company money, and that's something you can put on your annual performance review, that you didn't use your entire cost allocation for training and education, and show that you're being fiscally responsible for a company. But yes, if a company gives you a blank check, right? I think
do all of it.
Do all
No,
of it.
I'm
That's what I'm
kidding.
saying. No, that's not untrue. Like, if you're working for a company that's giving you a blank check on training, never leave that company. I don't care. Don't leave that company. And yes, I would sign up for all the things. Like, I think that what you benefit from there is you benefit from the value of diversity, right? If you have a blank check, I think you can do anything SANS, and I think that you can get a really good SANS penetration testing cert in 560, right? But I think that you can get a better cost of value cert with PTP, PTX from I&E for a fraction of the price, right?
I will say this though. I'm gonna
Go for it.
we have to make this as balanced as possible.
Absolutely.
One of the advantage, I used to do lots of classroom-based training, and you did as well. You worked for SANS or did SANS training for 5 years. One of the advantages of having an instructor is they were the big stick, aren't they? They're
Absolutely.
there to make sure that you do what you're supposed to be doing. You're in a classroom, as an example, and they're taking you through the material. They're trying to make sure that you don't sleep. It's very interactive. They're kind of forcing you, if you like, through the material.
I want to add on.
That's a big advantage to like self-paced.
Well, I want to add on to that, because one of the things that I'm a huge fan of with instructor training, right? The reason that I enjoyed my time at SANS as an instructor, right, was this is going to sound probably a little messed up to viewers, but when they bring you into the SANS ecosystem, and you think about those 6 big books that you get for something like 560 or or 504 or something like that, right? And you're like, God, Neal, how did you memorize 6 books worth of training when it came to teaching that stuff? And they're actually like, well, they don't tell you that at SANS. You're not there to regurgitate those 6 books worth of training, right? As a matter of fact, most SANS instructors struggle to get through every page of every book when it goes to presenting those slides. Instead, what they teach you is that people aren't there to come take your material. They're here to hear your war stories. And so what you're encouraged to do as a SANS instructor is to find those parts of the curriculum where you have really good stories, like what we do here on your show. And we talk about the things that exist, but then on the parts where we have stories, it's less about like, hey, here's what Metasploit is, and more about here's all the ways that I've used Metasploit from a penetration testing perspective, and here's what the value of Metasploit is in your penetration testing arsenal, which is not necessarily in the books that you get as a SANS teacher. And so what I would say is the value of in-person instruction and the value of having an instructor talk to you, which is something that you get sporadically through a lot of these courses on the paid side, is you get the value that comes with their experience. And one of the things that I think SANS has an advantage of, and I'll say this, again, in the essence of fairness, right? One of the things that SANS had an advantage of kind of pre-COVID was you got a lot of face time with that professional that allowed you to say, well, how did you use Metasploit this way? Or can you give me an example of a lot of the questions that you asked, David, on your show is, what did you do in this scenario? What did you do when you encountered this challenge? What did you do when you did this? And I think that's a value that you're going to struggle in a lot of these other self-paced learning environments.
It's interesting that you say that because in the Cisco training that I used to do, you were expected to train the material and you struggled. Some courses you struggled. So you had to skim certain sections, whatever. But by the end of the week, it was kind of expected that you had covered all or most of the material in the book. And that's interesting that SANS take a different approach. I think for me, it's always been a lot of guys prefer going on instructor-led because they can ask a question if they stuck. Or, I mean, you've got that person in front of you for 5 days or whatever it is, and they're there to help you. So it takes you out of the office. It's another big thing. You get taken out of the office where you don't get disturbances and stuff like that.
It is, and it's that. So this is the reason that I'm a fan of being that type of instructor, and this is the reason why I do my live streams, is I love the teacher-student interaction, right?
Yeah.
I can teach you how to use Metasploit, but let's say that, in some of the SANS classes I would teach, it was everything from a network admin to a CISO, right? And so the CISO is only there to get the cert because their company sent them there, and they just want to get the cert and be done with it. But the network admin is probably there to transition out of being a network admin to be a penetration tester, right? And so that interaction that comes with being able to tell the CISO what they can take away from that course that matters to them when they go back to do that job is vastly different than what you tell the network admin, but you have to appeal to both of them in the same classroom. And this is why that teacher-student interaction to me is the most fun and it's the most thrilling, is because, as an instructor, I like to be that person who can talk to both of you. And when you both leave my conversation or leave my course or leave my classroom, you're both going back to the office and applying something that I taught you that same day.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
And I don't think you get that with a lot of e-learning that's out there.
Yeah, and I mean the problem with e-learning, it's a standing joke on Udemy. How many people buy lots of courses on Udemy because they're not priced high.
Right.
So how many courses do people own that they've actually completed? That's a big problem. It's like how many books do I have on my bookshelf and how many have I actually read?
Right.
And I think that's a major problem with e-learning compared to, say, instructor-led. But Neal, you and I will talk for days. So let's sum this up. If you've got $100, don't go for paid training. Go for free training, and then spend your money on the labs like Hack the Box.
Absolutely,
yep.
Absolutely.
If you've got $1,000, you would be inclined to look at INE because you can get a year's access. And I have to mention this because INE do have boot camps that are. I'm not sure if that's for security though. Is it?
It is. They're just starting the boot camps up, but I want to change just your statement really quick on the $1,000. I know you're trying to keep this brief and direct to the folks, but this is why I'm trying to encourage the cost to value conversation. Right? Is think about it from an investment perspective. If you only have $1,000, where do you get the most value with your career based on that $1,000 investment? And so think about, it's not a quantity perspective, it's a quality perspective, right? I think SANS has high quality stuff, but the cost is too high. And so you're not going to be able to capitalize your career.
If you're paying for it, yes.
Yeah,
if you're paying for it.
Absolutely.
Being cynical, yeah. If the company's giving you a blank check, then why not? Because
absolutely.
You're going to get those certs, yeah.
100%. If the company gives you a blank check, go take every one of those SANS courses in that catalog. You're going to get a lot of value out of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always like to summarize because it's if you give someone 100 choices, then it's difficult to make a choice. So it's nice to know, Neal, this is your opinion, and I harp on that.
Absolutely,
it's your opinion.
Absolutely,
so I'm asking you what you would do.
Yep.
And everyone can decide to follow you or disagree with you. That's fine. And again, please put in the comments below if you disagree with Neal. Let us know what you would do with $100 or $1,000 or a blank check. But Neal, you've been in this game a long time. You've had a lot of experience, so that's why I push you to give us your opinion.
And I want to harp on that too. That's something that's come up. I've noticed it in comments, and I've noticed it on chat in my sessions. Right, this is my opinion, and I make that very, very open. It is my opinion. It's just based on what I've seen. Have I taken every course that's out there? Have I taken everything in everybody's portfolio? Absolutely not. And so I go based on the information that's available to me, just like I was sitting in your seat looking at from the outside, right? And I'll use I'll use anything InfoSec Institute related, right? I've never taken anything out of the InfoSec Institute catalog at all. Period. Dot. I've talked to their CEO and founder. He tried to recruit me to be an instructor a number of years ago. And I've looked at their stuff from the outside in, and I've looked at it from a student perspective to see if I would purchase it or buy it or anything like that. And so my perspective is looking at it from the outside in, and to everybody out there who's listening, who's got that $1,000 or that $100 in their hand, do I think that this is worth investing in? And so that's the perspective that my opinion is based on. Is in some of these organizations I do have hands-on experience, right? Pen Tester Academy, right? Anything EC Council, right? Secure Ninja, right? I do have hands-on experience with a lot of these, and so I can give very, very first-hand knowledge with a lot of this stuff. But just like you, I'm looking at some of these from the outside in, and I'm trying to assess the cost of value based on my opinion and my experience in this industry.
No, but it's great. I mean, you've got to take a position. So, yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you do. So I appreciate it.
But before you close this out, that's why I keep coming back over here to the demonstrative chart. The cognitive stuff, I think everybody is doing the cognitive stuff. Get the hands-on. Focus on the hands-on. I can't stress this part enough. Focus on the hands-on. This is the chart that I'm going to push everybody to, is the hands-on chart, because I think this is going to be the one that takes you further in your career than this one does. That's my belief.
It's actually cheaper.
And it's actually cheaper. I give a standing joke to my stream. I'm like, you see this thing right here? It doesn't type itself, right? You need to put your hands on this thing, and you need to put that thing to work inside of these demonstrative home labs, and that's what I think is important.